Hey guys, welcome back to Mindful Knits. I'm Solly, and today we're back again with another great beginner-friendly project, the Seed Stitch Washcloth. The washcloth is a perfect way to practice your knitting skills, and these washcloths are also very practical for everyday use around the house. Let's begin by taking a look at what is inside our beginner's kit. So inside our beginner's kit, we have 4 balls of cotton yarn, 1 circular knitting needle, and 1 plastic yarn needle to weave in your loose ends. So now all we need to do is pick a color and we can get started. For today's project, you will need 1 ball of your Mindful Knits yarn, and I've chosen the Afterglow shade for today's project, your 5mm knitting needles, and yarn needle for weaving in your ends afterwards, all of which they can be found in your beginner's kit. And one additional thing that you will need is just a pair of scissors. To begin our work, we're going to go ahead and use our long tail cast on method to cast on our stitches onto our needles. And the first step to doing the long tail cast on is determining how much of a tail you should leave for your project. So a good rule of thumb that I always abide by is just measuring out the desired length of the project and doing 3 times that. So 1, 2, and 3 approximately, and adding just a couple more inches for you to weave in your ends afterwards. So we're going to go ahead and create our slip knot here, turn it over, make a loop, and now we're going to go ahead and insert our needles into the loop. And when we are doing this, remember, always ensure that the tail end of your work is on the front side, and the working yarn, which is the yarn attached to your ball of yarn, is on the back. And if you need an in-depth demonstration of how to do the long tail cast on, you can refer to one of our earlier videos. So here, we're going to go ahead and make that diamond, open it up to a V, take our needle, go over to the left side, so under that first strand of yarn coming around our thumb, over to that third strand of yarn on the front of our index finger, release the thumb here, and pull to tighten. So we have 2 stitches. We're going to go ahead and continue until we have 25 stitches cast on. So make sure that you are pulling to tighten your stitches so that they are evenly spaced on the needle and not too loose that it is creating gaps, but not too tight that they're not able to freely slide over the needles. So we'll do a couple more here. Over to the third, release the thumb, pull to tighten. Over to the third, and then pull to tighten. So we have 5 stitches cast on right now, and I will meet you guys here when we have 25 stitches. So here I have 25 stitches cast on my needle, and now we are ready to start working our pattern. So our project today calls for a garter stitch border. So now we're going to be working 4 rows of the garter stitch. And the garter stitch consists of knitting every single stitch regardless of what row you're on. So we're going to grab our right needle here, insert our needle, and we're going to go ahead and wrap our yarn around, bring it to the front, slide it off the left needle. Repeat. So we're going to insert, wrap around, bring it to the front, slide it off. And we're going to continue this until the end of the row, and then we're going to repeat it for 3 more rows. Bring it to the front, slide it off. And I will meet you guys at the end of this row, just so we can show you how to turn your work over. Here I am, almost at the end of this row. I have 2 more stitches left to complete. Bring it to the front, slide it off, insert, wrap around, bring it to the front, and slide this needle off. So turning our work over is fairly simple. We're just going to go ahead and repeat what we have been doing, knitting every single stitch here. So let's go ahead and insert that needle from the one that is on top of the left needle. So not this loop on the bottom here, but we're going to insert it through the needle. Bring it to the front, slide it off, and essentially doing the same thing. And we are knitting every single stitch. So let's go ahead and do this for 3 more rows. We just completed our first garter stitch here. We're working our second one, and then we're going to do 2 more after the end of this one, and I will meet you guys at the end of your garter stitch border. So here I am at the end of my garter stitch border, and now we're going to start our second border, which is the stockinet stitch. So the stockinet stitch is comprised of purl stitches on one side and knit stitches on the other side. So because we have been knitting all of our stitches, we're going to go ahead and purl and begin our stockinet border now. And when we are creating our stockinet border, remember that we still have the garter stitch border on the 2 vertical sides as well. So every row is always going to begin with a 3 stitch garter border. So we're going to go ahead and knit the first 3 stitches regardless of what row we're on. So we're going to wrap around, bring it to the front, slide it off. Just going to scooch everything forward a little bit. And our last stitch for our garter stitch border is now complete. And now we're going to be purling the remaining of the stitches until we have 3 stitches left in this row. And this is the beginning of our stockinet. So we're going to bring the yarn forward. Remember, if we're purling, we always have to have the yarn in the front of our work. So back to front, right to left, and push it to the back and slide it off. Back to front, right to left, push it to the back, and slide it off. Just the inverse of a knit. And I will meet you guys at the end of this row. So we are almost at the end of our purl row here. I have 5 stitches left on my needle. Remember, 3 of them are going to be garter stitches, regardless of what row we're on. So I'm going to purl the remaining 2, just as I have been. Okay, and when I have 3 stitches left on my left needle, I'm going to go ahead and move my working yarn back to the back of our work, and we're going to knit the remaining stitches. And this is our garter stitch border carrying on. Now we're going to turn our work over, and we will see that the stockinet has begun to form on this side. So now we're going to go ahead and continue with the stockinet, which is a knit stitch all around on this row. So we're going to go ahead and, hold my yarn here, insert, and the garter stitch will continue on this side just because we also knitted the stitches from the other side. But as soon as we make it over to the 4th stitch here, the stitches are going to look different than the previous 3 because we purled these stitches on the other side. And you will see that the stockinet braids are here, the garter stitch bumps are here. Let's continue this until the end of this row. And remember, you are knitting every single stitch in this row. Okay, I'm almost done with the knit row here. Wrap it around, bring it to the front. Okay. Now you will see that the stockinet border is here, the garter stitch border is here. We're going to turn our work over now, and now we are going to begin our seed stitch in the middle, which is our main pattern. But remember, our pattern still has the garter stitch border and the stockinet border. Where we've been carrying on with our garter stitch border on every single row, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing with our stockinet stitch. And you will see what I mean by that in a minute. So before we go ahead and get started on our seed stitch pattern, we're going to go ahead and, as usual, garter stitch border on every single row. So we're going to knit the first 3 stitches just like clockwork. Going to go ahead and, on top of that, knit the 3rd one. And because this is the wrong side of our stockinet pattern, we're going to go ahead and purl 2 stitches to carry on with our stockinet. So bring your yarn to the front, wrap it around, slide it off. Back to front, right to left, push it to the back, slide it off. And now you have completed your stockinet border. And now our seed stitch pattern begins. So our seed stitch pattern starts with a knit stitch here, and then a purl stitch afterwards. So move your yarn to the front of your work, wrap it around, push it to the back, slide it off. We're gonna move our working yarn to the back of our project again, knit the next stitch. We're gonna move our yarn to the front and purl the next stitch. So the seed stitch is just comprised of alternating between a knit stitch and a purl stitch. And remember, when we have 5 stitches left at the end of this row, that's when we do our stockinette border and our garter stitch border. So I'll meet you guys here when we have 5 stitches left and carry on with our knit purl alternation in this row. So here I am. I have 6 stitches left on my left needle. My final one is going to be a knit stitch. Knit stitch is what we started our seed stitch pattern with towards the beginning of this row. And because we have an odd number of stitches for our seed stitch pattern, it's going to end in the stitch that we began with. And now we are ready to begin our stockinette border. So move your yarn to the front, and we're going to purl 2 stitches in a row, because this is the wrong side of our stockinette. Move your working yarn back to the back of your work and knit the remaining 3. Okay, now we're going to turn our work over again. And you will see that in just the row that we completed, there will be bumps and knits alternating in your stitches, and that is the essential goal of the seed stitch. So now we're going to continue on this side. We're going to go ahead and carry on with our garter stitch pattern. So knit the first 3, and then carry on with our stockinette pattern. And the stockinette, this is the right side of our work, so we're going to knit as well for 2 stitches. And our seed stitch pattern is always starting off with a knit stitch and then a purl stitch, and we're alternating between those. So regardless of which side of the work you're on, wrong side or right side, we are always going to be knitting and then purling. And you are just going to continue this pattern until you reach the end of your seed stitch pattern, and you will continue with your borders. So here I am at the end of my final seed stitch pattern, and now I'm ready to start my stockinette border on the top side of my work. So here we are, complete with our stockinette border here, and now we're going to take our work, turn it over, and we're just going to work the remaining garter stitch borders. Now we are at our final row, which means we are ready to bind off our stitches and finish our project. So to bind off, we will be beginning the row just like usual. So we're going to be knitting the first stitch and the second stitch. And once we have 2 stitches on our right hand side needle, we're going to use our left needle to pick up that first stitch on the right side. We're going to slide it over to the front of our needle, and we're going to slip it off over the other stitch. And now when we have 1 stitch left here, we're going to go ahead and knit another one. And when we have 2 stitches left, we're going to pick up that first one, slide it over to the front, slip it off over the other remaining stitch. And that is how you bind off your stitches in knitting. And I will meet you guys at the end of this row when we have 1 stitch left. So here we are, almost at the end of our bind off row. We're going to knit that final stitch, and we're going to pick up this one here, and we're going to slide it over and off that other stitch. We're going to take our scissors and leaving somewhat of a long tail for us, we're going to go ahead and cut off our working yarn and just pull this needle away from our work. And now all that is left to do is to weave in our ends. We're going to grab our plastic yarn that is in our beginner's kit. Just going to thread the needle here. And we're going to just go ahead and mimic some of these stitches. And I choose to do it on the wrong side of my stockinet, just so that there are no issues with the pattern on the front side. So I'm going to go ahead and insert it here, go around this one, and I'm going to go around this stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this tail off. I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing for the tail end on the other side. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and cut this off now as well. And then there we have our pattern. And here is your finished seed stitch washcloth. They're soft, useful, perfect for practicing your knitting skills. Hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. And if you're eager to start knitting or crocheting a new pattern, be sure to check out our other videos on our page, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial.